She said.
Hello, welcome. She said. Cheers.
Welcome.
We're back.
We're back.
I had to make Kaylee and Allie. That's your couple name, Callie.
What would your girls' names be? Chris Crayley.
No. Crayley?
Ooh.
Not
great.
No. Callie sounds way better.
Callista, like Callista Flockhart. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
It's fine.
Anyway, I had to make them stop talking so that we could actually record the podcast. So y'all missed a good 5 minutes of material while we weren't recording.
Yes. We're doing the catch up.
Yeah. Got to. Speaking
What's
of,
going on?
Yeah. Kaylee, you were talking about a very interesting personal development.
Yes. So I am getting new teeth. I have been self-conscious about my teeth for a very long time. I've had braces 4 times. So they're straight, but I have a fluoride problem for anybody listening who can't see my teeth right now. Grew up on well water. My teeth have discoloration. They're chipped. They're faded. I decided I'm going to get veneers. And so I'm getting them next month. And it's going to be a whole thing, but I'm super excited. I hope to smile more. It's kind of related to our conversation today. We can get into that as far as like game theory. And if you're an avatar and all of that, we're going to get in the weeds on that. But important update. And this is something we've talked about before. Allie, I know you have also considered veneers. And I think you got talked out of it. It's probably a smarter move to not do it and to just stick with the originals because it entails some risk. But
that was pre-Invisalign.
Yeah, so your teeth are so straight and so pretty.
Oh, thank you. I also hated my teeth, but that was more of they were not straight. And I was like, just scrap them and start over. And my mom was like, all right, calm down. So we did one thing at a time and I'm really happy with them now.
Yeah.
So do what you got to do to feel good.
Yeah.
That's right.
Agreed.
It's related to what we're going to talk about today. Yeah. So what else is new? What else do we need to catch up on?
I feel like that was Kaylee's the only person who had actual personal updates. I'm not getting new teeth. Is that an update?
Yep. We check in on that every time we record. You know.
How are your teeth? Do you still have them? Great.
Oh, I am launching a website at some point in the near future.
Yeah.
Yes.
Say more.
I'm praying that it will actually be live by the time this comes out. I feel like it's been supposed to launch for like 3 weeks and it's just real slow going.
So tell us what it is.
I forgot I have to actually talk about it. Okay. It is, of course, it is a Taylor Swift website. So it started, I needed a project during mat leave to like not kind of go crazy. And so I started this website as kind of an experiment for like AI and SEO stuff. Like what kind of content would work? What could I do with AI on a new site, et cetera, et cetera. And then it just kind of snowballed into kind of like a little baby media site. So I'm going to actually like hire freelancers and do things like games and quizzes and maybe some video stuff. So yeah, it will be launching here shortly, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're speaking to the 2 biggest Taylor Swift fans in the universe. So
I know.
We will.
Hey, we support you.
We're going to support you.
We do.
Yeah.
All the way.
It looks so beautiful. I saw some pictures.
It does. It looks super good.
I'm really excited. The design agency that I've been working with have done a really good job and I'm super happy with it. So I'm very excited to get it out there. Yeah.
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 Yay.
And Allie's got a bunch of travel coming up. We were talking about that a little bit.
So much, guys. Every other week, I'm basically doing
summer,
something.
Baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just tell you, if you ever have the urge to go to Florida and then immediately to Idaho, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Quite a journey.
So like how much travel time are we talking? Is it that there's no direct flights or is it just a long stretch?
It's just kind of an obscure like journey. We fly out of Orlando and we go to Spokane because we're going to a wedding in Coeur d'Alene. And I mean, it's doable. It's fine. It's just
Yeah.
like the times were awkward and there's no direct, no nonstop, which I feel like coming in and out of Chicago, I'm quite spoiled with nonstop flights.
Yeah.
But then I see you guys in August.
Yeah.
I'm going to Costa Rica.
Oh my
Ooh,
God.
what's in Costa Rica? Is that an omniscient thing?
Yeah, we're taking the team. We're doing an offsite. And then after, David and Alex and I are going to go hike a volcano in Guatemala.
Oh my
Amazing.
God. You're just traveling for the rest of 2024.
Anybody who knows me very well, even a year ago, this would have given me hives. And something changed this year where I'm like, fucking bring it on. Like,
I love it.
The beauty also is that I'm not planning a lot of these things. I just get to show up. So like granted, lower effort, like lead into some of these trips, but still some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. I'm super pumped for you. I want to see pictures too.
Yeah, we'll see. It's apparently an overnight hiking, camping situation. I'm like,
whoa,
just tell me what to bring. And yeah, I got to make sure my passport's updated and then we'll figure everything else out.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it.
Nice.
It's all happening.
Sounds fun.
All right. What's on the docket today?
Yeah, let's get into it. So today we're continuing our theme of going deep on one subject. This is one that I've been thinking about for a super long time, and I feel like I just keep getting more in the weeds on it. So high level view, the direction we're going today is like, how do you decide what to optimize for in life? And so a little bit of background. I've been reading a couple things lately that have me thinking about the lens through which we look at and examine our lives and how we make decisions based on what we see. And it kind of comes down to this question of like, what are you optimizing for? So another way to look at this is like, what game are you playing? If you look at this all as kind of game theory and you can acknowledge that life is a game and you have choices to make, you get to decide, like, do you fall in the camp of free will? Do you fall in the camp of determinism? It's kind of this mentality of like, are you active or passive? And so I want to start at the high level and hear your theories on like, where do you guys fall in this? How do you think about like, what lens do you look at your life through? Do you feel like you're the main character and you're kind of playing the game as the main character? Or do you see yourself more as like a supporting role in a larger story? So let's start there. Let's start with that question.
So a little question for the group.
I know. Just a light opener. I feel like it's selfish. It seems selfish to say this, but I view myself as like I'm the main character of the story that I'm living. It would feel weird to view myself any other way, I feel like.
I used to view myself as an NPC because
what did that look like?
What that looked like was I'm not happy unless everybody around me is happy. And if somebody else is unhappy, or even if it has nothing to do with me, but especially if it has to do with me, I would always feel responsible for other people's emotions, behaviors, reactions. And if I was only better, then life would be better. So in a way, I guess like I still felt like I was in somewhat of control, but for the most part, for the most part, I don't even want to call it passive because I feel like I know what you're saying. Like it is a very passive versus active mindset. But especially with like my friendships, and I'm talking like high school, college age. I'm not talking like recent years, but yeah, I was definitely more of an emotional follower, and I was incredibly affected, and I was incredibly like. This actually reminds me of New Girl. You've seen New Girl? Yes. Nod. Yes. Okay. There was that one scene where Schmidt and Jess are sitting in the car and Schmidt's like, you think about other people's feelings all day. Like, how do you get anything done? And I was like, I remember the first time I saw that and I was like, oh, fuck, I think that's me. So that's how it used to feel. Kaylee, you're nodding. Are you agreeing that that's what you've been?
I'm absolutely with you. I think it's a uniquely female problem because I think we're kind of taught to be of service to others and to be appeasing and appealing. And so it's very easy to slip into that. But what happens is once you start playing that role, you start bumping up against the edges of it all the time because it doesn't feel quite right. And you can't put your finger on why, but it feels like something about this is not true. And
Yeah.
it stirs something in you that makes you very uncomfortable. And so you start asking questions and you start trying to lift the lid on it. And you're like, what's the problem here? And I think it's much easier not to ask those questions and kind of to live in the space of like, this is easy. It's fine.
I
I'm in
know.
service of others. It's selfless. It's good.
I know.
And
It's almost
an illusion.
It's almost like wearing the wrong size shoes for years. And everybody
Mhm.
like, and when you speak up about like, oh, I'm getting a blister. Oh, this feels weird. You're either made to feel like that's your problem. Like you should
Yeah.
get better feet,
Yeah.
or it's like, just deal with it.
Yeah.
Like that's just part of life. That's part of being in a
Right.
relationship.
Yes.
That's part of being in a
Yeah.
marriage. That's part of being a friend, a student, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is going to be
Or
a good
it's-
chat.
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
very
It's a
interesting
good one.
though, because I relate to everything y'all just said. I think in some of my personal relationships, I definitely relate to that. But then in other areas of life, I feel very main character. Like I like to take risks. I like to kind of step outside of the box when it comes to like where I live or where I work. I've never thought about that before, but yeah, I don't know really how I would reconcile those two parts.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always felt really empowered, very much main character-esque in my career. Which is
Yeah.
probably why to some people that know me personally, they get confused when I say like I have anxiety or I am insecure or I feel very NPC-esque around certain people. Like they're like, what? Like you have a podcast and you have a business. And I'm like, to me, that's different part. Like it's not that I'm two different people, but it's just different compartments in my brain. Like I don't know how to account for that. Definitely more the main character now. And frankly, I give a lot of credit to Austin and having people around me that like encourage that. And I think this calls back to the conversation we had about like reconciling friendships as you get older and like you kind of interchange different parts of yourself. And I'm just really, really sensitive to opinionated people around me who don't support like what I want or what I need. Because I'm like, I spent way too long being influenced by this. It's hard to go backwards. But that's a different part of the conversation.
Yeah. I'm so with you. I think it's confusing because it is an illusion. It feels like, oh, I'm being selfless. I'm acting in service to other people. And so this must be good. It must be right. But the problem is you start getting this like itchy feeling inside of you of like, well, I'm doing all this work for everybody else, but what about me? Who's rooting for me? Who wants me to be the main character? And so, Allie, you talk about your partner who's like, it sounds like he's a champion for you. You know, like your partner ideally is somebody who's like rooting for you as the main character in your own story, regardless of what that means for them.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult. And I want to talk about this too. It's difficult when you have two super dominant people who are both main characters, because then you get this friction. You get this friction of like both people have very strong wills. They want what they want and they want the other person to concede. I feel like, and I could be wrong, but maybe it has to be a model where either you are extremely communicative and you can talk to each other and talk through the challenges and kind of navigate that smoothly, or one person's passive and one person is a little bit more dominant. What do you guys think about that? What are your thoughts on that theory?
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I would say probably 98% of people fall into the bucket of one person just assumes the passive role. Like I don't think most people are emotionally mature enough to take the first road where it's like, let's just be super communicative and figure this out. Which is sad.
I know. It's
convention. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with the latter, but I don't believe it has to be that way. And I'm thinking not only like romantic relationships, especially marriages, but also friendships. I mean, familial relationships, anywhere where you're kind of spending a lot of time together, taking up a lot of space. I actually think that, and this is something that it takes the right partner. It takes a lot of communication. So maybe it is the former that I'm describing, but I feel like the more that I champion Austin, the more he champions me. And I think that reciprocal, is that a word? Relationship where, and everyone's like, oh, it's a give and take. And I'm like, no one actually talks about what that means. Like nobody actually like, and I'm sure you guys have seen that video around Instagram, going around Instagram. That's like, someone says marriage is hard work. Like, tell me what that actually means. Like I've seen that going around the Stitch video a lot. And everyone describes it differently, but like, that's kind of how I've found my relationship to be is like, even though it sucks, like the more I give and the more I like champion him, I feel like I get more back. Not that that's kind of a prerequisite, right? Like it's not like, oh, I'm not going to do anything for you until you do something for me. It's not like that, but I feel like we've struck a decent balance where like I don't always want to be the main character. Like I actually do want Austin to be a main character too. And I want my friends to be main characters. Like I'm fine taking a back seat at times if it means like my friends are happy. And maybe that calls back on that people pleasing season of life. But I did at times genuinely like supporting. I like when people are happy. Like I like when people are vibing and they're feeling good. Like I support and cheer on my friends a lot. It's just, I kind of want them to do that for me too. So I don't know. I don't know if there's really like, if you can have two active, two dominant mindsets.
All right. My dogs are being such assholes today. I think it's interesting because I think that in a perfect world, rather than marriage counseling, before you sat down and talked about like, how do you guys think about having kids together? And like, do you have the same worldview? The more realistic conversation to have is like, how do you view the game of life? What game are you playing? Are you guys playing the same game? And so for me, the game that I'm playing is optimism, reach for the best possible version, rooting for myself, feel strongly enough about my own value as a human being that like I want the best possible version and I will take all the risk that entails. And whether it goes poorly or whether it goes perfectly, I'm going to learn from it. Either way, I'm not going to die. We're these weird human beings that get sent down to this planet to experience all of these feelings. Let's fucking play. That's the game. It's a game. Let's play. Let's fucking play it to the best of our ability. And if you can't have that square conversation with your partner, what happens most often is you're playing two different games. And so you get this friction because you're operating in two very different ways about how you view the world. I think it's so fascinating if you can just be honest about like, how do you view the game and how are you playing it? And can we play it together? That is so interesting to me.
Let me ask you this though. What happens when, because I mean, you're not going to be playing the same game for your whole life. So let's say you start off playing the same game as each other and then things happen. All of a sudden you're in two different games. How do you reconcile like you're going to change over the course of your life? The games that you're playing are going to change over the course of your life. What happens when you find yourself in two different games? Do you bounce or do you say like, how do we find our way back to the same game? It's like, how do you reconcile those?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Go. Yes.
I don't have. I'm shaking my head. I think what's tricky is like, I think people try to have this conversation through the lens of like, what are your values? What are your goals? And it's like getting at that, but it's really not answering like what are you optimizing for is like a very weird way of asking it, but it's so true. Like, because it's like these things that you're optimizing for guide every decision. Everything that you do, that you buy,
it colors everything.
Yeah. And even in your subconscious, which like, I think what's unfortunate is like, I don't think you really, first of all, it requires a lot of mental fortitude to get to this answer. I don't think a lot of people think like this. I don't think that they would even know how to answer it. I also think the word game has a negative connotation and it really shouldn't. But I think
it's really just theory. It's framing the theory.
Right. But it takes a lot of trial and error and it takes a lot of self-awareness, I think, to be able to analyze and answer this question and be truthful with yourself. Because like some people are playing games that they probably on the surface are like, nah, I don't want that. But like their actions, they're speaking differently. The way they're treating other people speaks differently. I don't know how to answer your question, Krista. I feel like I would say talk about it, but like that requires a lot of communication.
Yeah. Well, I'm absolutely in it right now. I'm fully in that question right now. My life is living that question. And I will tell you that for me, I had to decide that I was the main character. I had to stop being of service to everybody else, and I can still live and be the most generous version of myself and give back and plant seeds of goodness in the world and like try to be the best possible version of myself. But I don't have to throw myself on the flames to do that. And for years, I was like, this is part of it. I have to be a martyr. Like I have to sacrifice myself in service of this coupling, of this like role that I have built for myself. And I think I got a little bit older and I tried it for a long time and I kept bumping against the walls of it of like, ouch, this hurts. This isn't quite right. And I don't feel like myself and I don't know why. And so I was finally like, God damn, I have to be the main character. I have to root for me because no one else is going to do it. No one else is going to do that version for me. That is the assignment of life of like, you get this one spin, you get a very short blip of time. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to do the best possible version for yourself? Are you going to be optimistic and hopeful and like really strive for greatness? Or are you going to settle and be a little resentful along the way? Yeah. And I couldn't do the resentful version anymore because I was so tired all the time and I felt so sad.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really interesting way to frame these really big questions of like, how do you find meaning in your life? How do you view the limited spin that you get on this planet? And what do you do with it?
Yeah.
It's heavy.
It's sometimes, I shouldn't be baffled because I was this, I had this experience, but like it does blow my mind sometimes how easy it is to get caught up with like doing the do or like just doing like every day or just checking boxes. And I don't mean it in like a meaningless sense. Like everybody derives meaning from different things. It's not a matter of judging like what people are optimizing for or what game they're playing. It's just a matter of like, it's so easy to get caught up in the things that you feel like you're supposed to be doing. And I hear you in like the resentful thing. I think unfortunately a lot of people do reach a point where they're like reevaluating and they're like, it's easier to be resentful. Like I do think that a lot of people, whether it's about their careers or their, like children or marriage or, their family or I don't know. And they're just like, I'm in it. This is it, and I do think that does color a lot of how people treat other people is because they're just like, so not aligned with where they thought they'd be. That's what I was saying is it takes so much like focus and self-awareness to get to even ask yourself that question, much less like be real with yourself about it.
It's a lot of bravery because it entails a lot of risk. It's a lot of vulnerability. It's a lot of like, I'm wide open. I might get destroyed, but like, hit me with all of it.
Risk, but also just, I think you mentioned this in your notes, Kaylee, like society is just not set up for that way of thinking or that way of living your life. Society is set up for like, you should optimize for this very traditional way of life. And you work these very traditional types of jobs and you don't really think about it. Like you stay in it and you kind of choose the resentful way of being because that is what's like easier. That is what people are used to. And like, I think when you venture outside of that little box that society wants you to be in, it is very hard because people are judgmental or maybe jealous because they wish they could get outside of their boxes. It's not set up for people to optimize to be the main character at all.
Right. And we have a lot of like shame and embarrassment that's associated with when you kind of divert yourself from the traditional path. I will say, I don't think there's anything wrong with the traditional structure of things. I think that things naturally flow towards a common ground because people find a way that it works and it's functional. However, I think it should be easy. I think it should not feel hard. I think when you're in the right version of yourself and when you're living the truest version of yourself, it's easy as fuck. And every day feels fun and it's exciting. And yes, there's going to be hard times, but you know that it's the right path. It's the realest, truest version of yourself. Yeah. And so it feels worthwhile. You don't have the resentment piece.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's the assignment.
Yeah. It depends on what you want, right? Because it's like some people, maybe that is what they want. They want the like traditional American dream kind of thing. And so they're not resentful and it is easy for them. But I do, and they're lucky because society is set up to support that and to encourage that. But yes, we just do not make it easy for anyone who does not want that, which is unfortunate.
Something I've realized in the past couple of years is the more that I focus inward and the more that I like listen to, that gut feeling, Kaylee. And I wish there was a better word than easy, because I think that that's really tough to like teach. Not that it's like our job to teach, but like it's tough to advise other people on how to find that voice, because easy is not always the best indicator of the right direction. But I do understand what you're saying. Like it just sits better, like in your soul. It just like feels right.
Right.
Like
in your bones, you're like, fuck yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
It's like literally a feeling that comes up to here in your chest.
Like buoyancy, like something feels light, or like, I don't know.
Yes, let's go. I'm excited.
Yeah. Like omniscient,
right kind of hard.
Omniscient is the hardest thing I'll probably ever do. But it's like, I know that it's what I want to do. So it's like, fuck no, it's not easy, but like, it's right for me. But anyway, I think the more I focus on like what feels right for me and the things that excite me, bring me joy, make me feel buoyant, the less I give a fuck about other people, and the less I'm judging other people, and the less I don't care. Like if you're happy, I'm happy. And it might feel selfish to like turn inward, but I actually think it makes me a more selfless partner, friend, whatever. When I'm doing what's right for me, I feel like I don't have the time or the energy to think and evaluate what other people are doing. I don't actually care. But years ago, I was one of the most judgmental people you would have ever met. I didn't say anything. It was all in my brain, but I was just like, meh. And deep down, it was taxing. Jealousy, and it was misunderstanding. It was fear. It was like,
absolutely,
that doesn't fit in this box that I've been taught. How dare they? That's lame, stupid, blah, blah, blah. But deep down, I was like, that looks kind of fun. I wish I could just do that. Like, I wish I was that brave. Yeah.
We kind of talked about this in one of our previous episodes this season of like, you run out of energy to do things that don't feel worthwhile because you're just like, I don't have the time or the bandwidth to give a shit about the things that I don't actually care about. And I think this is part of that. I think it's this thing of like, everybody you meet in this world is a mirror, and it really clicks in when they hold up the mirror to you and you see back the version of yourself that you really want to be. And so, Allie, you kind of touched on that with you and Austin. Like, Austin reflects back to you this version of you that makes you feel proud and that makes you feel like, oh, yes, I'm on the right path. And when you do that, everything becomes super easy. And it's so interesting because I've been like, it's truly all theory. And I've been experimenting with this lately, but like things, the way they unfold in the present moment, it's like a green light. Like when you get in this way of thinking and you start operating this way, things play out so easily and so beautifully. And it's almost like an indicator from the game or from God or from the universe, however you think about it, that you're on the right track. You start seeing all these things that are like, oh, right, I'm on the right path. This is so interesting. And it's this kind of, you do have to be super self-aware. That's part of it. You have to be watching for it. But if you are, you see how easy it becomes. And so it's so confusing because you think like, I'm going on this path that feels very uncertain. There's a lot of risk. But you go down the path and then it starts to get easier. And it seems so counterintuitive. But in my experience, that's how it's been. The harder thing is usually the more beautiful version. It's easier. It's more fun. It's like, it feels right. There's just so much less friction along the way. And I think that's related to this conversation of like, how do you view the world? Do you realize that like none of this is really real? Because like the worst thing that could happen to you is you could die, right? You could die. But everything else is a learning opportunity because it's not going to kill you. That's the ultimate end.
Yeah.
So do you look at it through the lens of this is going to be informative and I'm going to learn from it, good or bad? Or do you look at it through the lens of, God damn it, the game just got harder. I'm already unhappy. This just made it worse. It's really perception is reality. Yeah. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating. And it's fascinating how even within the same brain, different things can, like, I feel like when it comes to work or like moving around, any like life experience outside of just relationships and friendships, I think I'm very much like, let's go. What's the worst that can happen? Let's do this. And I have found when I act in that way, it's like the what's the saying? Like, jump and the net will appear or whatever. Like that is typically how I see those situations play out. You take a risk. Usually it works out, even if working out means like you learn a lesson and you pivot. But in the same brain, when it comes to like more personal situations with family or friends or whoever, I'm not as quick to do that. And I think it's where the shame and the feeling selfish comes into play. Because then it's like, well, if I act like the main character right now, I'm being selfish in this relationship and I should see to this other person. It's hard. Yeah, that part is hard for me.
That's a similar delineation to me too.
Yeah.
I struggle with like people.
Yes. And see, Allie, you kind of talked to this too. I think work is a great place to start with this work of like, if you can find the thing that feels like this is challenging, it's hard, but I'm really good at it and it fills me up. That's a good place to start. That's a good way to kind of dip your toes in the water. So like I left my full-time job out of college to do the freelancing thing full-time. I put boundaries on it. I said, I'll give myself 18 months, see how this goes. It was a huge risk, but I did it and I bet on myself. And like I said, it worked. It's so surprising, but like you set the bar at a certain point and you reach for it and it often works because you really want it and you're capable and you're talented and you believe in yourself. And hopefully you have a support structure that supports you as you do that work. But it's kind of the thing of like, if you lean into those challenges when they present themselves, 9 times out of 10, it works. And on the one time that it doesn't, you learn something from it and it like informs how you move forward. And it's part of the process in a good way.
Yeah. I know it doesn't ultimately matter where all of this pressure comes from, but it does baffle me, like the way, Krista, you just explained, like work or travel or in this point in my life, some people I do feel that freedom with, but there are certain people in my life and then you have like yourself, it's like you versus you. You get caught up with like the, what's everybody else doing or what's the norm right now? Or like, for me, I always struggle with the more I see a message, the more likely I assume it's correct. I don't know. There's probably some bias, like having kids. I'll just use it as an example. You know, at an age right now where I'm like, I could. And I wonder if I wish I would have one day. And I don't want to. Like, I don't want to right now. I'm not going to say forever. I'm just saying right now. And it's hard because it's like, okay, so fair, somehow my algorithm got caught up in all this mommy stuff. So I'm sure in some way it feels like everybody's talking about it, but it's just my little sphere that's like very rampant. But generally, societally speaking, it's very common right now to have that conversation. So seeing just like, what is it, like the frequency bias or something, where it's like the more you see something, the more it feels right, or you assume it's correct, or like surely all these people wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't such a good idea. Like sometimes my brain does this weird like rationalizing thing, but like if I separate myself from that or I take a step away, I'm like, all that matters is what I think, and then ultimately what Austin thinks too, right? But because he's involved, but like what I want, what I think, like doesn't matter what's normal. It doesn't matter what's common. Like, and I get annoyed at myself and I'm like, how can I be so aware of some of these things and these biases, but still get caught up with just like the societal track or like, here's like next step is X. And I just don't know, is it like a herd mentality? Are we worried that we're going to be left out from like our ancestors, you know, got to stick together, numbers, safety in numbers. Like, I don't know. Cause you said the worst thing the worst thing that could happen is death. And I actually disagree.
Interesting.
I don't think death.
What do you think the worst alternative is?
Well, I think, I mean, this is speaking from like my gut reactions. I think like being abandoned or like being like alone and not having any kind of support or like nobody around you. Like I'm talking like worst case scenario, like literally nobody to support you.
Yeah.
That to me is worse.
That's a real thing from.
But isn't it interesting? Like it's caveman mentality.
Right. That's what I think it's like. Yeah.
You spend time alone and you're like, this is the worst of it. I'm left with myself.
Yeah. So that's what's funny.
If I don't like my own company, that's the problem. And
I think that's what's tricky is like, I love being alone, but it's like that feeling of like alone of like, I have nobody.
It's the idea of it.
The idea.
The idea of being lonely. But the reality is like, you need to go for a walk. You need to go outside. You need
I don't even think it's loneliness necessarily. According to famous anthropologist Dax Shepard, he he talks about this a lot. Like a lot of our fears around like doing things outside the box are based in that, where it's like back in the day, if you got kicked out of your group, it meant death. It meant isolation. It meant you didn't have resources. You didn't have community. Yeah. And so that is, our brains are still wired that way.
Yeah.
And and shout out to Desiree, our friend Desiree, who put out a beautiful newsletter today on this exact topic about like being alone is actually in our modern world extremely empowering. There's something very liberating about embracing like I'm so good with myself that like I can be in the world and enjoy my own company and be fine with that. Because the reality is you're never truly alone. That doesn't exist in our modern world. You can go to a coffee shop and be around other people. You can do the alone together thing. So it's all illusion. It's all caveman informed. And I feel like that's a piece of the game of like, do you acknowledge the game and how it has evolved over time? Can you acknowledge where we are today? And with that information, what do you do with it? What do you do with it? Are you playing it to the extent? Like, are you playing it to the last version with everything that you have, just like using every cell in your being to do the best possible version? Or are you settling and trying to just get by? And for me, the game that I'm playing is I want the best version. I will always be a reacher. I will always be somebody who's like, I'm going to fuck it up so badly along the way, but I'm going to reach for it because it feels like a version of being grateful. It feels like an expression of like, what a gift to be born. It feels like, let me do it the best I can. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying, right? To do that. But it's also super exciting too. It's all perception. It's all perception.
Yes, definitely.
So one of the questions related to this was like, let's think about this through the lens of like American society, right? So like find a job that contributes to society, keep the economic engine going, allow us to all play our part in consumerism culture because we're a capitalist society. It moves everything forward. Part of that is make sure that you get paired up, make sure that you marry somebody and have children because this, again, fuels the system, keeps the thing going. Contribute to society in ways that contribute to the common good. So like make sure that you volunteer, give to charity, and then also participate in this like sense of nationalism. So things that promote American values like church and go to sports game and like be part of this monoculture, right? Like be part of the system. Everything in our world is oriented towards those goals because that's our system that we're operating within. It's part of the game. Those are some of the rules that we have as part of our system. If you look at a different culture, it's very different. They operate in a very different way, but it's just a different game. And so it's like, this is the easiest way to view the game is like, you see the rules, you see the structure. What do you do with that information? And I think what's so sad is so many people don't even let themselves go to this level of like, do we see what's happening here? And once you do, it kind of opens up new doors. It's really interesting.
When you sent this over earlier, it reminded me of the Matrix, of like the awareness of like the red or blue pill, and
truly.
I think, I mean, I said it earlier of like, it's crazy how easy it is to just get caught up in the tide of, you know, you're checking off boxes of like all the years into school, and then you're in college and you're thinking about your job and you're out in the world. Are you dating? Who are you dating? Blah, blah, blah. Then you're bringing around like a partner and exploring what's next. And I think what's been really interesting is like typically I think around my age, maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older, depending on your personal timeline, is when you've done a lot of this. You've done a lot of this and you're like, what's next? Like what
I'm
like
so glad you brought this up.
because I think like I don't feel that as much because I have again like turned inward and really tried to figure out some days, you know, but I mean these days if I'm bored, I'm like, thank God I'm never bored anymore. But I think like it's more of um intellectually bored or like you don't have like what's next in the checklist. And I do see a lot of people who are unaware that they're on a wheel or like on an assembly line of sorts and they're like reaching for I don't know. I could probably hypothesize that many detrimental things follow that question once you've done everything on this list. But yes, I've seen a lot of that in our age, like around 30s. And millennials, I think more than anybody, because they're the ones that grew up with social media. So there's even been more exposure to like, look at what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, it's something to do with the speed of information. The speed of information has sped up so much in our era in such a dramatic way that the time gap has just shortened so much. And so the processing power, if you look at it from like, oh, we're all just computers, our processing power got super upgraded.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is like, okay, so you're 30 right now, I'm 35. I'm in the place now where I'm like, when you're 30, you still think, oh my gosh, there's still so much life to live. Even at 35, the thing that I'm bumping into now is like, how long can I chase fun? How long can I do that? And I think that that's where the child piece comes in because it's like, okay, I gave myself plenty of time to experiment with this game and like push the buttons.
Speaking of
And
child.
let me spawn. Let me spawn and like let somebody else have a spin at this thing because it's pretty cool.
Spawn indeed.
Yeah.
Spawn indeed. Hello, Mr. Beck.
Yes.
But it's the thing of like, let me give somebody else a spin. This is so beautiful. Like, let me give back and let somebody else do it and let me help shape them along the way. It's an act of service. It really is. And so regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, I think at a certain point it becomes, okay, I've played this game solo for a long time. Let me bring somebody else in and teach them what I know. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. And it doesn't have to necessarily be through parenthood. It could be like, let me write a book and give this, maybe that's your child. Maybe that's the thing you put into the world. Or like, let me make this film or produce this piece of music that like makes people feel something. And it's going to last and it's going to stay behind.
Beck likes that idea.
He does.
No.
He gets it.
Unmute
He's
the
like,
child.
I'm doing it, man. I was born.
He is dying to hop on
Let
this
him
mic.
free.
Oh man.
This grown man.
I like that. I like that mindset. Like that's probably the first perspective, Kaylee. Yes. Yes, I agree. That's probably the first perspective, Kaylee, that I've like actually been able to relate to when it comes to parenthood.
Yes. There's something beautiful about it. It's an act of service.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think what's hard is that for women, you have to be a mother. You can absolutely do it as a mother and like have a child and do it that way. But you can also do it so many other ways and you can do it multiple ways at the same time. But I think at a certain point, you look for meaning of like, how can I be of service beyond myself? Because I'm no longer playing the game just for me. I want to do something altruistic. I want to give back. I want to give my time and energy to something meaningful. Maybe it's a child, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a piece of art. All of those ways are ways to be a mother. Maybe it's simply volunteering. Maybe you never have a child and you're just like, I have a lot of love to give. I want to give it through a version of volunteering and like giving back to the world. But I think at a certain point you hit that wall of like, let me go beyond myself because I did the solo version for so long. What can I do next? Because it's a nod to I'm so grateful for this experience. How do I show that I'm grateful? Let my actions prove that.
I love that.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
I missed the first part of that.
Tell us about your
experience.
experience.
The first part of that conversation, but I like where it ended up.
So tell me about, you have Beck on your lap right now. Like,
I do.
What is your experience as a human being with a son in the world? Does it feel like an act of service?
I mean, yes, in the sense that it's a little bit like it's the Beck show, right? It's like what Beck needs. And you kind of, if his needs always went out over your own. Well, usually, but yeah, it honestly doesn't feel real, to be completely honest with you. Like
like how so?
Well, guy.
He's like, I'm very real. I'm right here.
I'm real. I'll touch your face.
He's very real. But it just doesn't feel like I am a mom, capital M TM. You know what I mean? Like it feels like he's just sort of always been here in a way. And it's just like, this is just my life. And I compare it a lot to when we got Franklin. Like when I got Franklin, it just was like, yes, this is added responsibility. Things are different, but also it just feels very natural. And it just feels like I've always loved Franklin. So it's pretty similar to that.
That's the thing of like, it doesn't feel hard. It feels right.
Yes.
It feels right because it's meaningful. It gives you a sense of meaning in this very, like there's so many directions you could take this ride, this spin on this planet. And it feels like a really important way to invest your time.
Yeah.
Because it's meaningful.
I think that's a good way to put it that like relates back to everything we've been talking about is it is the right kind of hard. And so it doesn't feel scary. It's like, even when it does feel scary,
you enjoy
it doesn't feel scary. Yes.
Yeah. It's rewarding. Because it's good.
It is. And it's so cool to like, similar to like having a pet or whatever, or like working on a project, you see it evolve and change. And that is incredibly cool. So yeah.
No, I totally get you, Allie. I'm very much with you for a long time where I was like in that zone of like, I'm just trying to take care of myself and like I'm doing the best I can. I think I got a little further down the road and I was like, at a certain point you get a lot of free time. And so you're like, what do I do with this? How do I invest this time that I have? And so the doors open to, well, I can pour it into a child, I could pour it into a project, I could pour it into something, but you want to give back in some way because at some point it becomes the like chasing fun thing of like, I'm going to travel and I'm going to see the world. It just becomes less meaningful. And so you're like, what can I do that's service? Capital S service.
Yeah. I love that.
It's nice. And I think you can do that even through the version of like, my kids have friends and I want to help them. Like I want to root for them on this journey and I want to support them.
I also, can I just say, I love that like in my view right now, it's like Kaylee on the right talking about this beautiful like journey into wanting to be a potential mom. And then on the left, it's me fighting Beck for the microphone and him just like going insane.
He's got stuff to say, Krista.
Let him go.
Like, yes, parenthood.
Free Beck.
He's got stuff to say. Yeah.
Amazing.
I don't know. I think it's super interesting. And I think again, like I would be so curious if all of us went to our partners and had this conversation of like, what game are you playing? Are we playing the same game? I think that would be so illuminating because you would learn so much about the other person's worldview and how they operate and how they make decisions. It's a really easy way to cut through all the noise and get to the point.
Yeah, I like that question. That and the optimize, I feel like just better encapsulates like, what are your values? Like, or what are your goals?
That's very vague.
Yeah.
It's super vague.
It's very vague. And I feel like it doesn't require you to go any deeper than just saying like, I it doesn't require
philosopher, tiny philosopher,
to go any deeper than saying like, my values are community, family, love or whatever. Like that's all you have to say. And you don't go any deeper. And it's like, well, what does that even mean? You know? And like
so abstract.
And like your version of community might look different than my version of community. So it's like, what does that really tell you?
Yeah. I went to a salon in New York last year and there was a couple there and somebody posed the question to this couple of like, how do you and your spouse connect? And he said, through intimacy and play. And I just thought, what the fuck does that mean? And also, what book did you read that in? And then regurgitate it without any comprehension.
Yeah.
It's one of those things of like, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? I'm so much more interested in like, tell me an example. Give me context on what that looks like for you. What does intimacy in play mean? And so it's this thing of like, it's super easy to keep everything in abstraction and to keep it really gray area and like, this sounds like the right answer. But if you lift the lid on it and dive deeper, it gets so interesting because you get right to the core of how people operate in this world.
Yeah.
And that's really what matters.
Yeah, it does feel like anymore, a lot of those high level phrases and terms have lost a lot of their value. Like my partner, Alex, wrote, my business partner, Alex, wrote a news.
Your work
You'd be
husband.
surprised because I have 2 partners and people are like, what? Anyway, he wrote this week's newsletter about like authenticity and like how it's really lost its meaning and what it really means in marketing and blah, blah, blah. But we were talking about it and he was like, now that I've written about it, I see it everywhere and people throw words like that around. I mean, in lots of different contexts, but it's like, yeah, what does it mean? Like, what is that? Like, what's the evidence? What's an example? And I feel like if you actually pushed people to do that, they wouldn't actually like know how they're using it, or they would realize that they're like, I don't actually do this. I'm not actually like authentic or whatever.
But that's also why I love this podcast, because I can sit down and talk to the two of you and have like a really meaningful conversation and get a lot from it and feel very positive feelings in my body. Yeah. Like something about it just feels right.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think too, like, I think a lot of people are on the verge of thinking through this stuff for themselves. And I hope that, I don't know, of our 7.5 listeners, that we're like helping other people move through their own questions. Or for me, it's just been valuable to realize like there's just not one way to do life. And it's just super empowering. And you can always change your mind.
What a gift. What a gift.
Love that as like, that's just the best piece of advice that I think anybody could ever get about anything. You can always change your mind. Everything always feels so final or permanent. And that's what makes it so stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we talked about last week is like, we like to fool ourselves into thinking that at some point we arrive at who we are. And it's just not true. You're changing until the minute you die. But along the way, oh my God, these dogs.
They agree
all these
with you.
Children on this podcast.
all these also contributing to the conversation. So embarrassing. But yes, like you have the ability to change. And that's exciting. Or it's terrifying, depending on how you look at it.
I hope that they don't edit out the background noise. It's very cute. I like it all.
Before we wrap up, I hope y'all didn't already talk about this when I was grabbing Beck, but do y'all think we live in a simulation? We've danced around the topic of that a bit in this episode. What do y'all think about the simulation theory?
Depends on how many milligrams I've taken. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think I'm still in the place, moving away from organized religion in the past like decade, where I'm still kind of working through what I think is true on that front. So I don't know.
I think that's a great answer.
Yeah.
It's a very humble answer of like, maybe, but I don't know. I don't claim to know.
I'm still thinking through like, do I even believe in an afterlife, or do I even believe in like a higher power? And that, I guess in some ways, those are all kind of the same types of questions, but that's more of how I've asked it of me. Because I think if the answer is like no, then it's like, okay, then we're probably just in a simulation. But I don't know how I feel about all that.
Yeah. I saw the other day, I can't remember what company it was, but some like AI company, they're trying to reimagine the way prison works. And they're doing that with AI. And it's literally sounds like the Matrix, where they plug the prisoner up and they have them experience a different reality as if they're living it. And so they would serve a sentence maybe like a few days, but it would feel like years. And so the way they experience time would move slower. And they would like give them different experiences based on the rehabilitation plan.
Interesting.
But all I could think when I was reading that was, if we're even getting close to this type of technology right now, where they could do that, they can literally plug somebody up and make them experience like a lifetime of thoughts and memories. Like, I feel like there's a good chance that that's real right now, and we're in that right now.
See, and that's how I feel similarly. Allie, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, wouldn't that just be like highly meta? Of like, we're in a simulation and then going in it. It's like Inception type shit.
I think that the fact that we can acknowledge that it's possible is a wink.
Yes.
That it's possible.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Like the fact that the moon is the same size as the sun and it creates a complete solar eclipse. It's like, statistically, what are the odds of that? It's so highly unlikely.
Well, I've also heard when people are talking about the simulation theory that there's a theory that this just continues to happen. So it's like simulation, you're in a simulation and then they create their own simulation and then they create their own simulation. And so it's just like this Russian doll situation, which is crazy to think about. But I don't know. I feel like it could be very likely.
If that's the mentality, I'm like, let's fucking play. Let's go. Let's go so hard. Let's fucking burn it out. Do the best possible version. Whoever's steering my avatar right now is like, let's fucking go. Let's do the best fucking version. And I think that's so beautiful because it's like a firework. It's like, I'm going to fucking burn out myself, but I'm going to do it and it's going to be so beautiful. I want that version.
It's so freeing. Nothing matters.
It is. It's exciting.
What is that?
It's so
nihilism?
optimistic. It's like, let's go. It's the opposite of nihilism. Yeah. It's like,
wait, I thought
even
nihilism
if it all
was
doesn't
nothing
matter.
Matters. Oh, like in a
nothing
negative
matters.
sense.
It's the opposite of that. It's like, even if it doesn't matter, let's go.
Right.
Let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Like nothing matters, but like in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the meme of like, nothing matters. The guy on the bus, the meme of like, nothing matters. And the other guy's like, nothing matters. I'm so excited. That's truly, I think that's the simplest version of it. It's like, do you look at it through a positive lens or do you look at it through a negative lens? Are you a pessimist or are you an optimist? It's so simple. And that's what's so frustrating because it is that simple. It's like, are you empowered or are you at mercy of everything that happens to you? It's so, so simple if you let it be. I don't know. It's an interesting thought experiment. So thank you for following me down this rabbit hole.
I feel like we got very into this today.
I know.
We did, and it was so good. And like this is the shit that makes life worth living. It's like you find this quality in other human beings, and it's like, oh my god, that's so exciting! It's so beautiful.
Yeah,
anything's possible.
Yes.
Beck says,
what if
me
it all
too.
works out? Yeah.
Anyways, just put Beck on for our sign off. Let's see what he has to say.
All right. Okay, our Generation Alpha correspondent. What are your thoughts on the simulation theory? He is eating the microphone.
One day the simulation will be able to translate what he's saying.
That just
we'll know
made my
what
day.
message he sent.
Mouth over mic. Well, there's no better sign off than that.
No, agreed. Agreed. All right.
That's the best. And my dogs are going nuts. So
yeah.
Perfect. Cheers.
Cheers.
Good chat.